What's up, guys? Flip here, EUC Chronicles, back with another video. How's everybody doing? In this episode, I would like to go over five daily practices to help you become a better electric unicycle rider. Hopefully these tips will help you along your journey as you progress into the electric unicycle universe. I've been riding for about 1 year, 7 months now, and with those years of riding, I've gained some knowledge along the way, either by learning myself or from others or from watching others to help me compile this list. Now, I just wanted to start with 5 because I'm going to do many more top 5s, and this is just the first of many. So without further ado, let's get started.
Number 5.
Check your tire pressure. I cannot stress this enough, and this is why this is number 5. It could be number 1, but this is going to be number 5. This is before you do anything else. After you're all suited and booted and ready to rock, check your tire pressure. Now, what I mean by that is all tire pressure isn't for every single rider. There is no definitive this is what you should ride at. Now, from a manufacturer's perspective, if you're a heavy set person and you do a lot of off curb riding, riding over potholes and things of that nature, then having a higher tire pressure is necessary to keep you from damaging your rim. But for newer riders and people just starting out, most of you won't be doing any of this. Most of you will just be riding on the street, riding on the sidewalk, in parks, etc. So having the optimal tire pressure is key for a better ride, a smoother ride, less, let's say, squirrely Shirley rides. And like I said, not everybody is going to acclimate to one tire pressure. So it's very important that you mess around and you find the right tire pressure that works for that particular wheel that you're riding. Let's just use an example. Let's just say the Veteran Sherman. Let's say if you had that at 35 PSI. That may feel comfortable for you, but it won't feel comfortable for someone else. So this is why I mean it's very important to find the tire pressure that actually works for you, that you feel comfortable with, and all around is going to keep you and the wheel happy. Now, as you progress and as you start doing more complicated riding maneuvers, then yeah, of course you want to raise your tire pressure if you're going to be doing jumps or any type of trick riding or riding in places that have a lot of potholes, and though I don't suggest people riding over potholes or through potholes, it does happen. So maybe further on down the line, you may want to adjust your tire pressure. But I've been riding for 1 year and 7 months with low tire pressure. And when I say low, I'm talking about 28 to like 32 on mostly all my wheels. I think the only wheel that I've ridden at 40 PSI was my MSX when I got it from Seth. And that's only because he had the tire pressure on tilt. Rightfully so, because he's doing a lot of jumps and stuff like that, hard landings. So yeah, but as soon as I got it, it works and it feels comfortable for me. So without dragging out these topics, that is my main advice for up and coming new riders, few months in. Find a tire pressure that works for you. Now, it also helps to have an air pump or a compressor in your house, so that way you don't have to go to your local gas station or whatever to adjust your tire pressure. So if you don't have one of those in the house, I definitely suggest getting one that works for your EUC, because it makes adjusting your tire pressure much easier, less of a headache and less of a hassle. So that is my number 5 tip for you, is check your tire pressure. Let's go to
number 4.
Know you and your wheel's limits. It is very easy from watching all these electric unicycle videos, and you see people doing all this incredible, exciting stuff, and you're like, hey, I want to try that. I'll try that. I came over from electric unicycle riding, from riding skateboard, riding BMX, mountain biking, little dirt bike riding as well. And I came in with the notion of, hey, you know, I've mastered all these other things. I'll be fine electric unicycle riding. This should be a piece of cake. And for the first 3 days, it was far from a piece of cake. I tell you that by this day 2, I was like really contemplating what did I get myself into, because I wasn't going to learn this weird new thing. And once I got it on my 3rd day, it was great, and I was completely hooked, and I was off to the races. But as I progressed, and as I ended up buying a new wheel the same week that I purchased my first wheel. So by the time I got really into riding, let's say a month in, I had no idea what my wheel limits were. I had no idea about when the battery goes low, you have to, to be a lot more cautious on how fast you're riding, how hard you're riding. I didn't know any of that nonsense. And there's videos of me pushing that Tesla with like 20%, 25% battery, and I'm gunning it up hills, and no gear on either. No gear, because I'm short bus. No gear, just pushing it to the limit. And believe me, with the amount of people that came out of the woodwork that yelled at me about not having any gear on, no one ever really checked me about riding my wheel at low battery, because no one knew. I didn't know. I didn't think anything of it. I figured as long as the thing's moving, you can move. So that goes back to knowing your wheel's limits. Now, knowing my limits, like I said, at the time I thought, I can do anything. I'm invincible. I'm fine. And I had to learn that the hard way too with my first EUC fall. Luckily for me, it was on grass. It still was a big fall because, what happened was I hit a two series of bumps, because it was like a huge divot from like a tractor trailer. So I hit the first one, which sent me up in the air, and then I came down and smacked the other one, and that just sent me flying. The good thing about that fall and when it happened and how it happened was because before that fall happened, I was kind of scared on what would happen when I did fall, because I knew it was going to happen eventually, and how would my body and mind react. Will I be fast enough, quick enough to catch myself and recover myself from a fall? And when that fall happened, like I was showing you, I immediately, went into my dive roll, got right back up and got to my wheel. So after that fall, I felt a lot better about if I did fall on asphalt or whatever the case may be, particularly at the speed that I was going when I fell on the EUC, I would be able to recover fairly well, as long as I didn't get ran over by a truck or anything like that. So knowing your limits is very, very important to keeping you safe and keeping you enjoying yourself on your EUC, because I'm sure within the first month, if I had a hard crash or a hard fall, that probably would have deterred me from riding EUCs. Maybe not altogether, but it would definitely have knocked me down a few pegs to where I'm like, maybe I'll find something else. Maybe I'll get an electric bike or something like that. So know your wheel and your limits while riding, before riding, and even after the fact. So that would be my number 4.
Number three.
Understand and respect your surroundings. Know where you're riding, what you're riding around, whom you're riding around. Is it a busy area? Do you ride in a park where it's densely populated? Do you ride on the street where there's tons of cars all over the place? Do you stay to the sidewalk where there's just you and a few pedestrians? Where do you ride? Understand where you ride and what's around you while you're riding. It's very important that you stay visible to people around you, and that you're not putting yourself in a position where you're going to run into somebody if you are riding in a park, if you're riding on a sidewalk. Some cities don't allow bicycles to ride on the sidewalk. You have to ride in the road. Because we're in this gray area with electric unicycles, I've taken advantage of both, and I love the fact that I can take advantage of both, where I can imagine if I was a car and I can use that. Joking. But I take advantage of both. I ride in the road, I ride on the sidewalk. If I'm, I personally like to ride against traffic. I don't like riding with traffic. And I know some people would say that. But for me, I like to make eye contact with the people that are coming towards me in vehicles, in cars, and whatever. I feel much more comfortable riding against traffic than I do riding with traffic. Now, obviously, there are some pros and cons to doing that, as a lot of New York City riders and street riders would definitely jump in and chime in. But for me personally, it works for me, and that kind of goes back to, number 4, which is, knowing your limitations and knowing what works best for you. And do I do it all the time? I say I ride against traffic 70% of the time. It's just a habit of mine. Yes, let's say 65, 70, but it's just a habit of mine. Now, obviously, if I'm going to the store, I basically stay on the same side of the road all the time. I don't know, maybe it's just me, I don't know. But again, that's because I like to make eye contact. When cars are coming down, I'm coming at cars, they're looking at me, I'm looking at them, they see me. Now, what gets dangerous is, God forbid, you have a fall, or you have to do some wild avoidance maneuver, and then you fall off your EUC, and there's a vehicle coming towards you, and you're sliding towards a vehicle. That obviously can be bad. But again, this is why I implement sidewalk riding when I can, because if I'm in a situation where there's a bunch of cars coming down and there's not a lot of room, I'll just go to the sidewalk, and then I come back in the road when I feel that it's a good time to do so. Like I said, I ride in the road. I'm not afraid to ride in the road. It's not that I'm scared or anything like that. I just don't really find it necessary. Where I live, it is not very populated. There's not a lot of people on the sidewalk ever. I mean, ever. And the street, as long as it's not rush hour, it's fairly mild. It's fairly calm. So I could definitely get away with riding the road, and I have. I just don't find a need to. I really don't find a need to. I've been riding, like I said, for a year and 7 months, and I've only had one fall, and that fall happened on grass. And the reason for that fall is not because I'm some pussy and I just don't do anything. I push myself on my wheel. I'm just super cautious, because my deal is fun versus being injured. I like to have fun. And if I'm out there pushing myself and I end up getting injured, that is time spent away from my wheel. And I've seen so many riders. I'm an admin of a EUC crash group, and I get to see all these and approve, these posts of people getting hurt all the time. And sometimes I ask myself, what the hell were you doing? Like, what were you doing? Because a lot of crashes could have been avoided. Listen to them describe what went wrong and stuff like that, and I can already hear, like, all right, well, there's a problem right there. You were doing that, or you're doing this. So know what you're doing, and it's helpful, and it's a good idea to know your surroundings and respect your surroundings. Know what you're riding around. Know who you're riding around. All that comes into play on making yourself a safe EUC rider. So that is my number 3 tip.
Number 2. Number 2.
Take the time to find your proper foot placement for your EUC. Again, this goes back to tire pressure. There is no definitive answer. There really isn't. I know some people would like to say, oh, there's only one way, there's this. That's nonsense. All EUCs are built differently. Pedals are built differently. Size width, what have you, depending on the weight of your electric unicycle, depending on the type of feet you have, your flat foot. There's so many variables that come into play. So being able to take the time and mess around with the proper foot placement will benefit you in the long run like nobody's business. I at first heard a lot of people say this, and I really didn't start implementing this until, maybe like 6 to 8 months of EUC riding. Like, I'll play around every now and then, but, shift my foot placement a little bit. But I never really took the time to practice what works for me and what feels comfortable for me. And for my Tesla and for my MSX, my MSX currently have the monster pedals. My Tesla has the standard Tesla pedals on it. And for me, let's say this is the pedal, I'm most comfortable with most of my front foot hanging off the pedal and having my heel, if this is the back of the pedal, my heel is basically even with the back of the pedal. I tried so many different riding styles. I tried you're standing on your toe with one foot and keeping your other foot flat, which is like, I learned that from U-Stride. I tried so many different foot placement positions and styles, and what works best for me, which feels most comfortable for me, is having my heel at the back of the pedal and having my foot off the front of the pedal. Now, a little bit of a warning, I basically wear 10 and a half. So you have to be careful with having that much of your toe hanging off the front of the pedal when carving and things like that, because you can definitely hit your foot on something and that will definitely send you flying, send your foot flying. It hasn't happened to me personally, but I have a mental note in my head of like, I'm very mindful of where and how low I'm carving and what I'm carving around. But as far as the level of comfortability and control goes, and not just control, but also what I noticed that earlier on, that my calves would just catch on fire when I was riding before. Fire! And granted, it's not a huge deal. You could just step off your EUC for like 5 minutes and get back on and you're fine. But nonetheless, I noticed that when I started riding with my foot the way I just described, absolutely no calf burning at all. So that helps for long rides, which I like to go on sometimes when I'm going there's a lot of bike trails around my house that, again, some of them are, they do have a lot of people on them, but most of them are just you by yourself with a couple of people around. So you like to go for a long EUC ride. And that makes all the difference. It makes the ride so much more enjoyable, because you don't want to have 10 miles to go on your ride to get back to your car or whatever, and your calves are just on fire, and it just makes for not that much of a fun ride. I could say miserable, but how can you really be miserable on an electric unicycle? But it still makes it uncomfortable and unpleasant. So take the time to really figure out what works best for you. Is it a goofy foot stance, one foot's forward, the other foot's back? Is it the, one foot down on the pedal, the other foot raised a little bit so you can have a little bit more control and torque power? There's so many different techniques and you can find them on YouTube, but nonetheless, finding what really works best for you is key, and that will definitely help you become a better unicycle rider, have more control, better response. And like I said, it just raises the fun factor that much more when you really lock yourself in to a riding style that works for you specifically and not just for a general riding style. So that will be my number 2 tip. Number 2. Now let's move on to the number 1 tip.
Number 1.
Number 1. Daily practice tip to become a better unicycle rider. Don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole. I've seen too many videos. Too many. And I already know I'm going to get a lot of flack from the community. Not everybody, but You know, I already know. Do I care? I don't know. But I know I'm going to get a lot of flack. But I have to say this. I've seen too many electric unicycle group ride videos where they are taking up 3 lanes of traffic, which is fine when there's nobody on the road. Go for it. But taking up 3 lanes of traffic when there's cars behind you, people have to get places. Now you're being a fucking asshole. Yeah, you are. Being an asshole. And then I have to ask myself, do you guys have cars? I'm starting to think that a lot of these guys don't have cars. Because if you're a daily driver, you would know how frustrating it is when you're trying to get to work, or even worse, trying to get home from work. And there's some jackass in front of you that's driving slower than the speed limit, just hogging the lane. You can't get around him, you can't do anything, and you're stuck. You're literally stuck behind this person. How frustrating that could be. And like I said, I wouldn't be bringing this up if I haven't seen so many videos of electric unicycle group rides doing this. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you? Are you so oblivious to the fact of how angry that will make people? And then what's worse about it is when they get confronted by drivers either on the road or people pull over. Most of the people in the group rides act like the driver's in the wrong. Like, well, you should just wait behind me riding my little wheel toy. Yeah, I said it, little wheel toy. Because that's what they're looking at, and this is how they're feeling when they're watching you. Now, granted, to us, electric unicycle riding is everything. To somebody coming home from a long-ass day of work, 10-hour work shift, just trying to get home, behind 6 guys hogging up 3 lanes of traffic with your little fucking wheel toy, yeah, that's enough to definitely start a situation. And I know I'm saying this from experience because I am an electric unicycle rider. But God forbid if I was coming home and I saw 3 guys hogging up 3 lanes of traffic while I'm trying to get home, it's going to be a situation. That's just because, granted, some people, they're just going to whatever. They're not built for confrontation. They're just not. But not everybody's like that. And we know from last year's video where there was an incident, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but there was a confrontation happening because this went on. And, you know, the electric unicycle guys wanted to try to fight the driver, which is like, now you're taking it to a whole nother level. And not everybody's with it. Not everybody's just going to sit there and be intimidated. I don't care if it's 60 or 70 or whatever. Like, no one's just going to stand for that. So I don't get it. I don't respect it. I don't like it. And I know some of them will say, oh, well, it's all right and blah, blah. Blocking 1 lane of traffic while leaving 2 free lanes of traffic, or blocking 1 lane and leaving 1 lane open so people could pass you, that's fine. But literally blocking the entire road makes you an asshole. So, as you progress in your unicycle riding, and as you go forward and start joining group rides, just keep that in the back of your mind that don't be an asshole. You don't own the road. Unicycles weren't built to supersede vehicles. They're a great way to get around town without having a vehicle, but you're not more important than the cars on the road. You're just not. Because when it comes down to it, you know, it's not about, you know, who's better. It's about what kills. That's where I make my judgment. It's about what kills. And you running into a car at 25 miles an hour is not going to end well for you. So please, 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 when you're out riding, enjoying yourself, with your crew, whatever, have fun, but don't be an asshole. Do not be an asshole. And that doesn't go for cars. That goes for people, pedestrians. That goes for everybody. Don't be an asshole. because it's not going to end well for you. You may get away with it here, there, you may get away with it, but eventually it's going to come back to haunt you without question. Karma never fails. Haven't seen it fail once. So those are my 5 daily tips to help you become a better unicycle rider. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to comment any tips you have below. Please feel free to add on to anything that I said. And let's keep this dialogue going. And thank you guys for tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed this. And I will see you in the next episode. Flip here, EUC Chronicles. And we are out. Peace.
Thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoy it. Be sure to like if you actually enjoy it. Don't forget to ride into that subscribe button for more videos to come from EUC Chronicles. That bell is obnoxious.